Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm Vishaka, a senior solutions architect, and today we are learning about APIs from the ground up, what they are, why they matter, and now how they are powering AI applications. Understanding how systems communicate is a skill every engineer should have. I repeat, every engineer should know how APIs work, no matter whichever role you are targeting. Knowing how API works for traditional software as well as AI powered apps will give you a real edge. So let's dive in. To start with, an API or an application programming interface is a controlled way around how software systems talk to each other. If the client is a website, your app, or an AI agent, and the server is where your data and logic lives, the API is the connection between them. For example, when you open Instagram and your feed loads, your application didn't build those posts. It sent a request to Instagram servers sitting in some edge location, and an API brought that content back. So, understanding APIs is one crucial skill in system design. The reason being, the modern applications are no longer built as one giant application. They are built by connecting services, payments, maps, authentication, databases, AI models, search systems, and business tools. So, if you understand APIs, you actually understand how software works together. And for AI applications, this is even more critical. AI models don't live in isolation. They call APIs to search data, retrieve documents, trigger workflows, book tickets, and thousands of other actions in the background. So, this is just an overview, and you definitely need to dive more. In the next few minutes, we will cover API concepts level 100. Next, the interview specific API architecture patterns and trade offs. Third, API integrations in AI applications. Fourth, the infrastructure layer of APIs. Our fifth section is all about frameworks, and we'll wrap the video with what you can build next. Let's go. Now let's start with the basic concepts first. API communicates through HTTP methods, which defines what action needs to be performed on a resource. The most common methods are GET, that's retrieve data, POST, which means create data, put or patch, which means update data, and then delete, which removes the data. Let's start with a basic API concept using a simple REST API example here. Imagine this request. The method is GET. That means we are asking the server to read and fetch data. A GET request should not change the server data. The path tells us the resource. Here, the resource is POST. The V1 means version 1 of the API. Versioning is important here because APIs evolve over time without breaking existing systems. Now, the query parameters here adds the instruction. Filter narrows the result, sort orders it, and page plus page size controls pagination. So, the server does not send thousands of records at once. Now, the header section here carries the metadata. The authorization bearer proves who we are. This token is typically a JWT, a JSON Web Token. It's a compact encoded string that carries three things: who you are, what you are allowed to do, and an expiry time. So when you send this JWT token with your request, the server does not need to look you up in the database. It just verifies the token signature and trusts what's inside. This is why JWT is very common in APIs. They are stateless, fast, and self-contained. And the accept flag says that we want the response in the JSON format. Now let's compare this with a POST request. A POST process usually creates something new or sends data for processing. Here, the client sends a JSON in the request body, and the server may respond with the created object. A very common tool used to test these requests is Postman. You don't have to write any front-end code for it. You choose the method, enter the URL, add headers, send a body if needed, and then inspect the server response. Next, API architecture patterns and trade-offs. Let's look at the common ones. First is REST API. It's the most common web API style and also the standard one. The source is usually a client like a browser or an application. The destination is a server like users, orders, posts. The request API uses the standard HTTP methods as we discussed above: get, post, put, patch, and delete. And the response is usually JSON. Here's the typical flow of it. Client sends an HTTP request to the server and gets a JSON response. It is stateless, resource-oriented, and the most widely used pattern on the web. There are some trade-offs though. It is simple to learn and widely adopted, but it can lead to overfetching or underfetching the data. And it also has multiple endpoints, which means you need to make multiple round trips to get related data. To help with this, GraphQL was adopted. Instead of hitting multiple endpoints like /users or /posts, you send a single query to one endpoint and ask for exactly the fields you want. The response shape matches your query exactly, which avoids overfetching and underfetching. This is especially useful when front-end apps needs flexible data. Now, there is a trade off here too. It gives clients precise control over the data, but at complexity on the server side. Also, caching is harder here as compared to the REST APIs because every query is unique. Also, poorly written queries can put a heavy load on the databases. Our next pattern is SOAP. It is older and more formal. It uses XML and strict contracts. You still see SOAP APIs in banking, enterprise, telecom, and government systems. So don't get surprised if you hear SOAP APIs. Just know that the request and responses are structured XML envelopes. The biggest trade-off with SOAP is it's verbose. Also a bit slower to work with, which is an overkill for most enterprises. Our next API architecture pattern is gRPC. Instead of JSON over HTTP, it uses a compact binary format called protocol buffers over HTTP2. It is extremely fast and often used for internal microservice to microservice communication, where performance matters more than human readability. So REST, SOAP, GraphQL, they were all client to server communication patterns. This pattern is more around the backend servers. Now, gRPC offers exceptional performance and strongly typed contracts. Also, the binary format makes debugging harder. Like I said, it is less browser friendly than REST APIs and requires more tooling setup to get started. Next up is WebSockets. This one keeps a connection open between client and a server. Instead of request, response, and dump pattern, both sides keep sending messages. This is useful for chat apps, live dashboards, games, and streaming updates. And with your AI app, when an AI chat interface gives you answers token by token, it is often using WebSocket-like streaming pattern. It is great for real-time and low latency communication. But persistent connections consume server resources at scale. So scalability becomes a problem here. The last one here is webhooks. It reverses the usual request flow. Instead of your app constantly asking, did something happen? Did something changed? Another system calls your API when an event occurs. For example, Stripe application can call your server when a payment succeeds. GitHub can call your server to do something when code is pushed. So it's all event based. The source here is your external service and the destination here is your API endpoint. Format is usually HTTP post with JSON. It is very efficient and event driven. So there's no wasted polling. But your endpoint must be publicly reachable. And you need to handle retries, failures, and duplicated events carefully. Our next section is APIs in AI applications. In AI applications, APIs are used for three things. First, calling AI models. Your application sends text, image, audio, or structured input to model APIs and receives the generated output. Second is giving AI access to tools. The model may decide if it needs to call the search API, database API, calendar API, or an internal business API. Third is orchestrating workflows. AI apps often chain multiple API calls, retrieve context, call a model, validate output, call another tool, save the result, and then return the answer to the user. These are the three major workflows you need to pay attention to. Now, OpenAI's current recommended interface for new projects is Response API, which provides a unified interface to generate model responses and tools. OpenAI standards also documents REST, streaming, and real-time APIs, with API keys sent using the bearer authentication method. A simple OpenAI request looks like this. The source is your application, the destination is the model API. The request contains the model name and the input. The response contains the generated output, metadata, and the usage information. Many AI platforms supports the OpenAI compatible APIs. That usually means these platforms support familiar endpoint shapes, authentication style, and request formats so developers can swap models without a lot of code change. For streaming AI applications, the request may arrive token by token or event by event instead of all at once. This is why your chat interface can start showing you an answer even before the model has finished generating. Now, as AI applications got more complex, every tool connection was built from scratch. Search integration, custom connector, database access, there was no standard. If you switch model providers, your connectors break. That's the problem MCP, also known as Model Context Protocol, was introduced to solve. MCP is an open standard that defines how AI applications can connect to external tools and data sources. Same protocol, any model. Build the connector once and use it anywhere that speaks MCP. Now, here's where MCP sits in the workflow. A user sends a request to your application. Your application sends a request to the model. The model decides mid generation that it needs to call an external tool, that it needs external context, or needs to take an action. The MCP client handles that request in a standardized way. The MCP server sits in front of your tools and speaks the same protocol, regardless of what's behind it. The result comes back into the model's context and the generation continues. Now let's talk about API infrastructure. Behind every serious API is an infrastructure. A raw API endpoint is just a function on a server. In production, you do not expose it directly. You put an API gateway in front. Think of it as a middleware layer that does some additional work before the request reaches your code. The gateway enforces rate limiting. So, for example, if a client sends 10,000 requests all at once, the gateway rejects the request before your server is overwhelmed. It also handles authentication by checking API keys, JWT tokens, and other credentials. So only authorized callers can get through. For example, if you have a subscription of a basic user, you won't get access to the pro plan of the model. It handles routing and also collects logs and metric. For example, you can check response times, error rates, and what is the token usage per client. These are some popular API gateways. Now, one thing to note here, monitoring and documentation are not optional. You need monitoring to know when things break and documentation so that developers knows how to use your API. So tools like Datadog, Prometheus, Grafana helps with monitoring and Swagger or OpenAI helps with documentation. Our next section is API frameworks and other tools. Now when you want to build your own API, one beginner friendly Python option is Flask. It is a lightweight web framework used to build Python APIs quickly. You define a route, attach an HTTP method, write a function, and Flask handles the request and response flow. A basic Flask API looks like this. Here, /health is a get endpoint. It returns a simple status. /summarize is a post endpoint that receives JSON, reads the text field, and returns a JSON response. Now, there are other tools that do similar jobs. Fast APIs are very popular for modern Python APIs because it is fast and automatically creates OpenAI docs. Django REST framework is very popular for big Django applications. Express.js is widely used for Node.js. Spring Boot is common for Java enterprise systems. Pinnet for Microsoft environments. There's just some tools you should be aware of. The essence here is the tool changes, but the core idea stays the same. Define endpoints, accept requests, validate inputs, run logic, and return responses. Now, here's what you can build next. There's a free Python project for AI application development on Coursera, which will help you create an AI-powered web app using Flask and IBM Watson. It covers the full development lifecycle. Python modules, unit testing, best practices, routing, CRUD operations, and then deploying to a live server. So do check it out. Also, the link is added below. It's a free course, so it doesn't hurt to check it out. Now, that's a wrap. Here's a quick summary. APIs connects clients and servers. HTTP methods defines what kind of action is happening. Basic API concepts are still gold. Different architecture problems solve different problems. REST for resource-based APIs. GraphQL for flexible queries. SOAP for strict enterprise contracts. gRPC for fast service-to-service calls, WebSockets for live two-way communications, and webhooks for event notification. And for AI applications, APIs are becoming more powerful because it connects models to real systems. A model can generate text, but APIs let it retrieve data, call tools, take actions, and becomes a part of the real workflow. So if you understand APIs, you understand the nervous system of modern software. So don't skip this. Until next time.